Part 24. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 240. After New Year's Day, the Spurs' opponent in the first game in 2013 was the Bucks. This game was still an away game, and the Spurs started a new round of their road trip. Facing the Bucks, the Spurs won easily. 7 of them scored in double figures. Angzi scored 22 points. The Spurs had the highest score on the team. The second highest, Tony Parker, scored 20 points. The remaining Kawhi Leonard, Duncan, Ginobili, Boris Diaw, and Mills all scored in double figures. With this team performance, the Spurs beat the Bucks 117-100. Then, the Spurs boarded the plane to New York. In this away game to challenge the Knicks, the Spurs took a lot of attention. The decline in the first half made the Spurs lose the first place in the Western Conference, so the Spurs must be sure in the second half. Try to fight back. The Knicks have been in good form this season. They have played 21 wins and 10 losses this season, ranking second in the Eastern Conference. Carmelo Anthony's scoring average has always been in the league's top 2 with Kevin Durant, either Anthony first or Durant first. With the Knicks in good form, the Spurs have to put in more energy if they want to win this game. Half an hour before the start of the game, CCTV's live broadcast room was already preparing for the game. Yujia and Sukun will explain the game. This game, in addition to the second in the West and the second in the East, should be a battle between the best sixth man. Teacher Su, what do you think? Sukun nodded. Yes, Angzi is currently a direct competitor of the best sixth man with J.R. Smith. In the new forecast of the best sixth man in the United States, J.R. ranks first and Angzi ranks first. Second, this game can be regarded as a battle between the two of them. Whoever wins can have some small advantages in the selection of the best sixth man. In the Spurs locker room, Angzi quickly changed his jersey and Popovich stood in the center of the court. In this game, he decided to make 2 small adjustments. In this game, our lineup has been adjusted twice, and the point guard is still its Tony Parker, shooting guard Danny Green, small forward Kawhi Leonard, power forward Tim Duncan, and center Thiago Splitter, Thiago. You enter this game and pay attention to protecting the backboard. The improvement of the Knicks this season, in Popovich's view, is nothing more than 2 reasons. One is the arrival of Jason Kidd and Raymond Felton, which activated Anthony and J.R. Smith, and the other is the new horse. Cuz Camby and Tyson Chandler provided rebound protection for the Knicks' outside shooters. So Popovich chose to let Splitter in to protect the rebound. Spree said that he understood that soon the game began, and the passionate voices of the DJs of the players on both sides appeared one after another. Madison Square Garden Arena is known as the Mecca Holy Land of basketball, but for visiting teams like the Spurs, when they first entered the field, the Holy Land of Mecca was not at all like the Holy Land of Mecca, boozing everywhere, and even enthusiastic Knicks fans cursed Spurs players and coaches loudly on the sidelines. It is no wonder that Reggie Miller would scold the fans here after making a 3-pointer. At the beginning of the game, the Spurs took the lead in scoring and took the lead. Tony Parker easily broke through the old Jason Kidd and hit a shot. However, the Knicks quickly returned to color with Anthony's back and scored the opening score. Anthony seemed to be in good shape. But then, Leonard's long-arm defense quickly put Anthony into a struggle. Fortunately, Mike Woodson reacted quickly and replaced J.R. Smith on the court, which immediately shared Anthony's scoring pressure. The game reached the 7th minute of the first quarter, and it was the official timeout. Popovich replaced Manu Ginobili, but did not replace Angzi. The reason for not changing to Angzi is simple, because Leonard defended Anthony well, and the Spurs didn't need to change to Angzi to disrupt the current defensive rhythm. So Angzi can only continue to wait for the opportunity on the bench. Perhaps this is the worst point of the substitute player. You can play first. If the condition is good, the substitute player's playing time will be compressed. For example, Angzi in this game. Not surprisingly, Angzi didn't even want to play in the first quarter. Sure enough, the game reached the end of the first quarter, the Spurs 25-22, leading 3 points to end this quarter. Leonard did a good job defensively, defending Anthony only scored 6 points in the first quarter, but the Knicks' sixth man J.R. Smith broke out. After Mike Woodson replaced him, he scored 13 points in most of the quarter, helping the Knicks to bite the score. Before the start of the second quarter, Popovich began to change again. He glanced at an 11, then thought about it, and said, "An, you play for Tony, Manu goes to play point guard, Danny replaces Kahi. An, you go to play shooting guard, against J.R. Smith, Danny goes to play small forward, Boris goes on the field to replace Tim after several substitutions and adjustments. This tragedy is Patrick Mills." Originally in accordance with the Spurs rotation policy, Patrick Mills should have played in the second quarter. As a result, at the beginning of the second quarter, Popovich decided to let Angzi and Danny Green play together in order to maintain the wing defense. By the way, An, your next task is to guard J.R. Smith, but you also have to take care of it offensively, understand? Popovich turned to Angzi as if suddenly remembering something. "I see," Coach in 11 nodded. "There is nothing difficult to defend against J.R. Smith, but it is difficult to also take into account the offense. After all, J.R. Smith is in a hot state this season, and it is not so easy to defend. If Angzi puts most of his energy into defense, it will not be difficult to guard J.R. Smith, but the most important thing is that Angzi also scored part of his energy and put it into the offensive end, which is difficult to do. But think about it, it's a good thing for Popovich to take care of the offensive end," so an 11 nodded and agreed. At the beginning of the second quarter, Angzi played and faced J.R. Smith. This is the first matchup between Angzi and J.R. Smith in a season. Angzi also played against J.R. Smith last season, but at that time J.R. Smith was not in such a good state as it is now, so Angzi easily dealt with him, and then pushed forward. The two were still in CBA matchups. Angzi also passed the death prevention of J.R. Smith, and stepped on Smith. Today, the two are still rivals for the best sixth man. Although Angzi has no idea about the honor of the best sixth man, J.R. Smith has it. So as soon as he played, J.R. Smith stared at Angzi. The first ball in the opening game was the Knicks' right to the ball. Jason Kidd slowly controlled the ball. Although he is old and Jason Kidd's scoring ability is getting worse, Kidd's passing is getting more and more devilish. After dribbling the ball, Jason Kidd passed the ball directly, and then shouted, "Smith.Jr., Little Smith. Receive the ball." Junior Smith is J.R. Smith's nickname, and J.R. Smith's teammates like to call him that. When he shouted out, J.R. Smith went straight to the top of the arc to catch the ball, and then did not look at Angzi, who had come to the defense, and made a breakthrough. Then an unreasonable shot, the basketball hit the rim from the top of Angzi. The first ball was not guarded. J.R. Smith looked at Angzi when he returned to defense, and his eyes were quite provocative. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen-San Buletinji. Chapter 241. Angzi was provoked, but it is not surprising that his grudges with J.R. Smith can be regarded as old-fashioned grudges, counting from the CBA. On the offensive end, as soon as Angzi took his place, J.R. Smith spoke, "An, it's been a long time since I saw you, but you seem to be getting back." Angzi ignored him, just silently watching Manu holding the ball, ready to move and participate in the offense at any time. J.R. Smith kept talking, "Did you see my score? I have scored 15 points, and what about you?" "0. "That's right, haha, it's 0. Looking at J.R. Smith's raised fingers, 0. Angzi was a little helpless, and it was too uncomfortable to be provoked, especially since Angzi played a little late in this game, which made Angzi even more irritable. The Angzi posted by J.R. Smith is very tight. Obviously, He has also worked very the defensive end. The Angzi he wants to defend continues to score 0. Seeing J.R. Smith sticking to her tightly, an 11 suddenly laughed, "Little Smith, do you think you can really guard me?" J.R. Smith's face immediately turned red, and Angzi actually called him Little Smith, which made him quite unhappy, especially when he thought that Angzi was still a second-year rookie. This unhappy was even more obvious. But at this moment, an 11 suddenly ran to the three-point line of the sideline, and received a pass from Manu Ginobili. J.R. Smith rushed over in horror, but Angzi's shot was very decisive. Although the chance of this goal was not very good, Angzi still decided. Take this opportunity. Let Smith shut up. Facing the interference of J.R. Smith, Angzi rolled over in the air, facing the basket, and shot a jumper. With a crisp sound, the basketball hit the center of the basket. Go in. 3 points. Angzi returned a three-pointer without showing any weakness. Angzi's three-pointer. I directly hit back at the goal of J.R. Smith just now. A perfect goal, Yujia shouted, and Sukun on the side quickly said, we saw that J.R. had been talking to Angzi just now. What is it? It must be rubbish. It seems that Angzi used actions to fight back at J.R. Smith's rubbish. Sukun can be regarded as a domestic veteran commentator. His commentary style has a great feature, that is, he likes to say some off-topics, and these off-topics also let Sukun guess what is happening on the court. J.R. Smith was not convinced by Angzi's score. He rushed to the front court and continued to stand beside Angzi. Jason Kidd quickly assigned the basketball to J.R. Smith. Because Anthony was not on the court, J.R. Smith became the next strongest scorer. Hey, Chinese boy, I can't guard you, but you don't want to guard me either. Angzi rolled his eyes and didn't speak. J.R. Smith, who received the ball, made a three-threat gesture, and then continued, are you ready to be kicked by me? Mom, this guy is never going to end. It seems that he won't know why the flowers are so red if he doesn't teach him a lesson. An 11 lowered his body and assumed a defensive posture. J.R. Smith's ability to hold the ball is still very good. If it is not brain dead, J.R. Smith is at least an all-star shooting guard, but it is a pity that he is really brain dead. After the three threats, J.R. Smith took the ball and broke through, with only a small change of direction. Obviously, he underestimated Angzi's defense. Angzi just took a big step and slammed into the front of J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith still wanted to continue to rush, but his strength was not at Angzi's level at all. After rushing 2 steps against Angzi's defense, the pace began to be chaotic. J.R. Smith forcibly stopped his footsteps, and then directly jumped in place. But Angzi is sticking to him. How can he make his jump shot so easily? As a result, the two jumped almost one after the other. Although Angzi jumped back, his explosive power directly surpassed J.R. Smith, and his long arm directly crossed the top of J.R. Smith's head, covering the basketball. Only a loud pop was heard in the Madison Square Garden arena, and the basketball went straight out. Angzi gave J.R. Smith a cold look, which was silent contempt. J.R. Smith squeezed his fist and blushed. He was eaten to death by Angzi. Obviously he shouldn't have boasted about going to Haikou just now. It was a long time since he met Angzi's defense. J.R. Smith had forgotten Angzi's defense. By this time, he once again tasted the taste of being defensively guarded. In the Spurs offense, Angzi directly opened his hand at the top of the arc to ask for the ball, facing J.R. Smith with his back, and after sitting twice, he immediately retreated a jumper. The basketball crossed an arc and went straight into the basket. Beat down the dog. Angzi used a successful defense and a post-up single to let J.R. Smith know that the reason why he could score 15 points before was because Angzi didn't play. There was a boo in Madison Square Garden arena. New York fans have always been the most impatient. Angzi's offense and defense helped the Spurs widen the point difference to 6 points. Then, J.R. Smith played singles again, and Angzi was a big hat, snapped the basketball fan. Then one grabbed the basketball fast break, Danny Green made a layup, 8 points difference. Mike Woodson stood up and reluctantly called a timeout. After the timeout, Mike Woodson frowned. Angzi's defense was too restrained by J.R. Smith. Except for the first ball, all of J.R. Smith's next 2 goals were taken. The miserable couldn't be more miserable. The point difference was already 8 points. For the Knicks, no adjustment, there is no hope of winning this game. Maro you play, replace Steve, Novak, and Chris, Copeland, comes on, replace Amar, Stat ML, we play a junior a lineup, run up to speed, Smith, don't attack with the ball next, let's play off the ball, let's play the offense first. Don't worry about the defense. Attack. 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 Understand. Break the San Antonio defense. Mike Woodson's roar was heard even by the audience on the sidelines, and he seemed to use the level of his voice to represent his determination. The Spurs also made a substitution here. I don't know if Popovich really guessed it or something. A substitution, Patrick Mills, Splitter, and Angzi will be replaced. From the top to the 4th position, in addition to Angzi who needs to continue to face J.R. Smith when defensive, Angzi's position is the power forward at other times. The Spurs also play in a small lineup. The center is Boris Dior, which is a bit of giving up rebounds completely, but when the Spurs came on the court, they found that the Knicks were actually a small lineup. Mike Woodson was also surprised. He had just prepared to play a few waves of fast breaks with a large and 4 small lineups, and chased the 8-point lagging behind. As a result, he found that the Spurs were actually a small lineup, so he just finished changing players. I became anxious. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 242. Mike Woodson was very anxious. The Knicks, who had just changed into a small lineup, were restrained by the Spurs, who were also playing with a small lineup. The situation was not optimistic. Mike Woodson even wanted to call another timeout. On the court, Jason Kidd deserves to be a veteran who has been in the league for more than 10 years. When he saw that the Spurs are also a small lineup, or even smaller, Jason Kidd directly replaced Mike Woodson to make an adjustment. Maro, we can't continue to play a small lineup and play fast break. In this way, you can reach the 4th position and we will play offensively, improve the success rate and protect the rebounds. Carmelo Anthony is not a fool. He naturally understands that Jason Kidd's adjustment is reasonable, so he nodded to express his understanding. After the timeout came back and the game started, Mike Woodson suddenly discovered that the Knicks did not play as he said. Instead, Anthony was pushed to the 4th position. They played a slow-paced positional battle. At the moment, there was a burst of lightness in his heart. The Spurs' adjustments dragged down the water, and the Knicks also had a chance to maintain the situation on the court. This season is Jason Kidd's last season. Kidd, who is getting older and more demon, has gradually begun to come into contact with some coaching matters. This adjustment can show some clues. In the Knicks' first attack, Kidd dribbled for a while and handed the ball to Anthony inside. Anthony is also a master of back-to-back singles. He faced Danny Green with his back, pushed back twice, turned around with a slip, and scored 2 points. As soon as Anthony came out, the Spurs' defense was stretched, but Popovich didn't care. And Anthony couldn't make it up. The Spurs attacked, Angzi topped the 4th position, Anthony switched to Angzi, and the two faced each other. Anthony is quieter than J.R. Smith, but Angzi is a little itchy at this time. Just now, Anthony's back makes Angzi want to try to, or ask Banman to get an axe. So he stubbornly withstood Anthony with his back, got the position, and opened his hands for the ball. Mills held the ball on the outside line for a while, and did not find any good opportunities. Seeing that Angzi was in a good position and wanted the ball, he didn't hesitate to pass the basketball to Angzi. Angzi beat Anthony on the back, and Yujia and Sukun in the CCTV broadcast room paid close attention with interest. Angzi singles Anthony on his back, Shuang and battle. Haha, yes, Angzi has made rapid progress in post-up singles recently. It is already considered the top post-back in the NBA, and Anthony's post-back has always been his regular scoring method. With his back, sitting, and fighting twice, Anthony ate it abruptly. In terms of strength, Anthony is not Angzi's opponent, but in terms of skills, Anthony is not anxious. Angzi's few sittings and fights were all cleverly avoided by Anthony. Angzi played twice and didn't find a good opportunity, but Angzi was still very smart. He wandered around to find Anthony's defensive center of gravity, then suddenly turned around and squeezed Anthony to the basket. At this time, Anthony suddenly lost his defensive focus and the defensive position was gone, so he followed behind and watched Angzi succeed in a layup. Back, turned around. Directly squeezed Anthony, layup. In, Yujia's commentary was still so passionate, and Angzi scored this layup. The fans who watched the live followed the sound and cheered. A beautiful goal. Angzi has fully used his physical advantage and his back playing skills are not better than Anthony, so use your strength to crush the goal. As Sukun summarized, since Angzi's skills are not as good as Anthony, Angzi's physical advantage has been used by Angzi. However, Angzi still has his own understanding of skills. He is indeed inferior to Anthony in skills now. Because Anthony has been practicing backfighting for more than 10 years, and 11 only started to practice backfighting skills. In fact, practice makes perfect. Angzi hasn't practiced soon, so practice makes perfect. Back scoring, the Spurs still led by 8 points, but then, Carmelo Anthony's appearance continued the Knicks' offensive firepower, the Spurs failed to continue to expand the lead, the game ended in the second quarter, the Spurs lost because of the Knicks regained some points for the protection of the inside rebounds. In the end, halftime ended, the Spurs 57-52, leading by 5 points into the intermission. In the first half, Popovich felt it was a pity that the Spurs had to win this game. For the first place in the Western Conference, the Spurs cannot afford to lose, so Popovich thought about it. After a while, standing in the middle of the locker room, he said, "In the second half, we will make some small adjustments. Tony, and Kahi, Tim, and Aaron, you 5 will play in the second half. We will play offensively, and the defensive end will protect the backcourt. Rebounding, through man-to-man defense, disrupts their rhythm." Popovich's idea is very simple. Don't look at the Knicks' ferocious momentum this season, but there are actually 2 points in the Knicks. One is Carmelo Anthony, who averaged close to 30 points per game, and the other is the field. J.R. Smith averaged 18 points. The other players are those who steal too when they are in good shape. For example, Steve Novak, who has been on the field before, can still get a lot with Jason Kidd. It's a 3-point chance. And now, Popovich directly let Angzi and Leonard play together. Angzi defends J.R. Smith, Leonard defends Anthony, each of them stares at one, and the Spurs use positional warfare to grind the offense. The success rate of the 2 big men also used to protect the backcourt rebounds, let Aaron Baines, the meat shield, to deal with Tyson Chandler. Everything looked perfect. Then, halftime was over, Popovich clapped his hands and let the players all play. Well, the game is back. The Spurs made another substitution. Tony Parker played, Angzi and Leonard partnered on the wing, and the inside was a combination of Duncan and Aaron Baines. Ugio began to introduce the lineups of both sides in the second half. On the Knicks side, the point guard is Raymond Felton, the shooting guard J.R. Smith, the small forward Carmelo Anthony, and the inside is a combination of Stoudemire and Champion Chandler. At the beginning of the second half of the game, the Spurs got the ball on the first attack. Tony Parker cut in. Facing Raymond Felton's defensive position, he made a jump shot directly, but it was a pity that he hit the ball. The Spurs didn't feel good in the opening game. After Tony Parker missed a goal first, Duncan didn't make a subsequent mid-range shot. But the Knicks are in good condition. Anthony faced Leonard's defense and scored 2 consecutive goals. The point difference was even suddenly. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 243. After 2 consecutive misses, Parker was also a little anxious. He quickly brought the ball to the front court. This ball must be won. If the ball is not won, then the Knicks will have to overtake the score. So Tony Parker commanded the running position of his teammates while holding the ball. Anzi ran to the top of the arc and actively cooperated with Parker once. Tony Parker broke through with the ball and attracted the defense and quickly divided the ball. Kawhi Leonard took the ball and shot from mid-range, unguarded, but still hit the iron. With a bang, the rebound was won by Tyson Chandler against Aaron Baines. Still not in. At the beginning of the third quarter, the Spurs fell into an inexplicable circle of ironclad. Carmelo Anthony scored the Knicks. Facing Leonard, Anthony singled head-on, and made another jumper. The Knicks overtook the score. There was no way. Among the 5 players on the field, except for Aaron Baines, an 11 hadn't taken a shot. So after half of the game, an 11 asked for the ball, and Parker quickly passed the ball. Anzi singles himself, and he is defending by J.R. Smith. From the second half of the second quarter, after J.R. Smith's defense against Chang Anzi, it is difficult to score again. It is difficult for Anzi to defend against the defensive end. Get a good offensive opportunity, so throughout the first half, Anzi didn't make much shots. A total of 5 shots, 3 goals, and 8 points were scored. So in the second half, J.R. Smith continued this defensive style, especially after the Knicks overtook the score. J.R. Smith's action became bigger and more exciting. Anzi didn't care about him. He directly turned his back on the outside line and held the ball with his back to the basket. Turning to observe, there are Stoudemire and Chandler in the Knicks penalty area. With Anzi's current lame breakthrough, it is better not to enter the penalty area. So, an 11 lowered her body, sitting and fighting in a row, and then turned around to make a gesture. J.R. Smith leaped forward, and when he was flying in the air, he realized that it was a fake action. After J.R. Smith flew in the air, Anzi really took off. Beep beep. The referee blew the whistle continuously. Anzi's shot hit J.R. Smith's defense, and it was a foul. However, Anzi did not rush away, but stared at the basketball that was flying higher and higher. The basketball flew higher and higher, and then suddenly fell in a strange arc, and then amidst the exclamation of the Madison Square Garden arena, plunged into the basket. Woko actually got in. Sukun was surprised, and unexpectedly exploded, but Ujia on the side quickly covered his voice. Go in. Go in. Go in, 3 in a row. Ujia was excited. Anzi hit a 3-pointer. There is still a chance for an extra penalty. A 3-pointer against the sky. See if the extra penalty can make a hit. If it hits, then the 4-pointer is a success. Anzi stood on the free throw line amidst the boos of the full arena. The source of the boos was that Anzi had just celebrated with Parker's chest bump. The New Yorkers were dissatisfied, so the sky began to booze. Penalty. Anzi's free throws were still very stable, but J.R. Smith was not convinced. He still wanted to interfere with Anzi. Standing on the side of the free throw line, J.R. Smith opened his mouth and said, I know a beautiful woman in your country called Sister Feng. Anzi shook her hand. Sister Feng? Then the basketball flew out and almost missed the shot. Fortunately, the basketball turned twice on the rim and got in. An additional penalty hit. This should be the first time in Angzi's NBA career that he scored 4 points successfully, Yuji's voice sounded, and on the court, Angzi raised his right hand and coldly celebrated the 4-pointer. J.R. Smith continued to be unconvinced. He just thought of Sister Feng, so he returned to the offensive end of the Knicks and still used Sister Feng to interfere with Angzi's mind. And, looking at you, you must know Sister Feng. Seeing that J.R. Smith said this with a little bragging, an 11 couldn't help but nodded. Of course, Sister Feng knew the most famous internet celebrity in China. You domestic beauty, don't you know, she is now in New York, I just met with her last week. J.R. Smith showed an intoxicated expression, but Angzi couldn't bear to listen anymore, because it was really disgusting. On the Knicks side, Anthony attracted the defense and scored the ball to Chandler on the inside to dunk. The Spurs quickly plunged into the offense. Angzi also took this opportunity to stay away from J.R. Smith. But looking back, Angzi ran to the front court. J.R. Smith still reluctantly said, hey, and, I haven't finished yet. Angzi received the ball from a high position and faced J.R. Smith again with his back, but J.R. Smith behind him still said endlessly, you don't know, Feng's sister, what it's like, what a ecstasy, that night. Angzi doesn't have to look back to know that J.R. Smith must still have that expression of enjoyment. The taste of foreigners is peculiar. Angzi didn't care about him, turned around and made a jumper, dodges J.R. Smith's defense, and hit again by 2 points. Angzi scored another goal, a 2-pointer. He scored 6 points in the third quarter to help the Spurs equalize the score. J.R. Smith continued to struggle, you may not have enjoyed the beauties of your home country, don't you know, Feng's sister's lips. An 11 couldn't listen anymore. He was now a little doubtful whether this guy was making up a story. He disgusted himself with Sister Feng, but seeing the expression of J.R. Smith's enjoyment and the description that resembled Sister Feng, an 11 was a little bit convinced. With the Knicks' offense, Carmelo Anthony made a turnaround jumper and scored 2 more points to help the Knicks take the lead again. Angzi shook off J.R. Smith, rushed to the front court, and then continued to face J.R. Smith. Listening to J.R. Smith's disgusting trash talk, Angzi tried to restrain himself, that he took the ball again, or took the ball with his back. J.R. Smith continued talking about Sister Feng, and 11 decided to use a goal to shut up this disgusting guy. Back hitting hit J.R. Smith one after another, J.R. Smith's trash talk became intermittent, and then, Angzi took advantage of J.R. Smith to adjust the defensive center of gravity, directly turned and jumped. Also, you don't know, Sister Feng. J.R. Smith was still talking about Sister Feng. Angzi glanced at J.R. Smith coldly, and spit out a few words, I have 16 points, you, still 15 points. J.R. Smith blushed all of a sudden. He has blushed countless times in this game. For him, the act of blushing seems to be no difficulty. But this time, J.R. Smith looked at Angzi with his face. There was also a serious look on him. But in the next sentence, an 11 smiled directly, and, you must be jealous of me, because I slept with the great beauty of your country, Feng Ji. Angzi really wanted to reply to him, slut. I still slept with your country's beautiful Abby Hornacek. But think about it, don't compare Abby to Sister Feng. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yiwen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 244. In the third quarter, Angzi scored 8 points in a row, helping the Spurs to bite the point difference. Popovich also quickly made adjustments, replaced with a few fairly good substitutes, and gradually stabilized the situation on the court. However, the point difference has not been opened up, whether it is the Knicks or the Spurs, they have not been able to open up the point difference of this game. The anxious game looked worrying. Angzi played the third quarter, with 24 points. The score continued to play in the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, Angzi scored 16 points alone, so in the fourth quarter, the hot Angzi continued to play. His position is still shooting guard, but the small forward has been replaced by Danny Green. The third quarter failed to continue the excellent status. Nader was put off the court to rest by Popovich, with Patrick Mills at the point guard position, and a combination of Duncan and Boris Diaw on the inside. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, the Knicks had the ball. Carmelo Anthony took the ball and cut inside, followed by an emergency stop jumper and hit the board. The Knicks scored again at the beginning of the fourth quarter, leading the Spurs by 3 points. In the Spurs offense, Patrick Mills took the ball to the front court, and then threw it to Boris Diaw, who mentioned high-level organizational support. An 11 rushed to the sideline, shook off J.R. Smith. Boris Diaw's soft pass, coupled with his wide vision, and quickly found the open space in front of an 11, a pass passed, an 11 made a straight jumper. With a crisp sound of brushing the net, Angzi hit a three-pointer at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Angzi scored another goal and scored a three-pointer at the opening to tie the score. He has already scored 27 points in this game. He is not far from his personal record of 32 points. There was a boo in Madison Square Garden Arena, but the boo was not directed at Angzi, because judging from the curses from the sidelines, it should be directed at J.R. Smith. J.R., fact squid. Did you go out and fool around again yesterday? Dogshit. Dogshit defense. Even a substitute can't guard it? J.R. Smith's face is not very good looking, but he is obviously familiar with the abuse of home team players by New York fans, and he did not show an expression of too much anger. But when it came to the offensive end, J.R. Smith began to seriously look for opportunities on the offensive end. When he was scolded by the fans, J.R. Smith wanted to get back on the court as soon as possible. In a run, J.R. Smith shook off Angzi one step, then rushed to the three-point line and opened his hand for the ball. Ball. Quick, J.R. Smith yelled, so Raymond Felton, who was holding the ball, quickly passed the ball. After catching the ball, J.R. Smith shot directly, but Angzi had already caught up with him, flying like a big hat. With a snap, the basketball flew out. Hey, buddy, are you a skill that was 100% cheated? Counting the 2 blocks in the first half, Angzi has already taken J.R. Smith 3 times, which made Angzi some questions, and then asked, so Angzi, I saw J.R. Smith blushing again. The upright Angzi wanted to say one more thing, you still took the blushing bulletin. But thinking about it, I still didn't say. Angzi's big cap gave the Spurs a chance to overtake the score. However, because the basketball flew out of the sideline, the Knicks had the possession of the ball, but only 6 or 7 seconds of offensive time were left. There was not enough time for the Knicks. Can only play a wave of fast offenses, and whether he can score a goal has to be said otherwise. J.R. Smith sent a sideline kick, and the Spurs defense was quick and timely, but Anthony used the pick and roll to catch the ball and dribbled 2 steps directly and shot it against Danny Green's defense. Swish, a basketball hit. Madison Square Garden Arena was the moment the goal was scored. There was an earth-shattering cheer. 3 points. Carmelo Anthony again. Less than 7 seconds left. His three-point buzzer helped the Knicks lead again. Carmelo Anthony celebrated with hammering his chest. This three-pointer is very important. Although the fourth quarter has just begun, any difference of 1 or 2 points is fatal to the two teams with anxious points. The Spurs served in the backcourt. Angzi stood next to Mills, waiting for Mills to receive the ball, and then ran to the front court together. Soon Raymond Felton crossed the center line and forced the pass. J.R. Smith also chose to slowly, surrounded by Carmelo Anthony, who has been in the backcourt. The Knicks played a full court press. So Angzi quickly accelerated his pace, moved away from J.R. Smith, and asked for the ball. Mills, who had a very slow dribble speed, quickly passed the ball. Angzi didn't pause after getting the ball. A J.R. Smith who accelerated to get rid of the chase. the Heat rushed to the front court and made an emergency stop jumper directly outside the three-point line. Chasing 1/3, Uchiha shouted. Then there was a clear voice, "Huh. Go in. Go in again." Angzi's chasing 3 points. The score is equalized again. Good shot, this one was played very cleverly by Angzi. As soon as the Knicks started to press on, he ran quickly, ran to the front to catch the ball, and then shook off the Knicks defense and shot directly. "I have to say his golf quotient is very high," Uchiha still commented simply and neatly, while Sukun, who has always been broken-mouthed, analyzed Angzi's three-pointer, full of praise. Angzi and Anthony made three-pointers each other, and the difference between the two teams was still biting tightly. Then, Carmelo Anthony entered the personal mode, controlled himself to the front court, then summoned Chandler's pick and roll, one step away from Danny Green, and then abruptly stopped the jumper and hit again. The Madison Square Garden arena burst into cheers again. Amidst the cheers, the Spurs took the ball again in the backcourt. This time, the Knicks dare not use the full court press tactics anymore. After all, the failure just now is still vivid. Mills advanced to the front court with the ball, this time it was Angzi. Angzi strolled around from the inside and then came back. Just standing firmly at the top of the arc, Mills scored the ball directly, and J.R. Smith also rushed over. But Angzi felt that her hand felt very hot, so she chose to shoot without hesitation. Hit again. Angzi's 33rd point. It's still Angzi. The 33rd point. He scored a new high in a single game. And there is still a chance to continue to expand, because the score is still anxious. Yes, that's right, Angzi and Anthony scored points at the beginning of the fourth quarter. The Spurs have to rely on Angzi's scoring in this quarter, so the possibility of replacing Angzi is very small. Sukun and Uchiha discussed whether Angzi can continue to expand his personal scoring highs, but as soon as the voice fell, Knicks coach Mike Woodson called a timeout, and their hearts were immediately corrected. Will Popovich be in the end? Will you replace Angzi? Mike Woodson called a timeout. This timeout was not because the Knicks fell into a disadvantage. Mike Woodson felt that he needed to adjust, but he discovered the possibility of winning the game. He felt that at this time, an adjustment should be made. Up. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 246. After the timeout, Angzi did not get replaced, but his matchup was changed, from J.R. Smith to Carmelo Anthony, because Vicky chose to replace Manu Ginobili, and then he also asked Angzi to devote more energy to defending Anthony. Well, it seems that with Ginobili, Vicky is trying to improve the current unfavorable offensive situation. Let Angzi pay more attention to defense, which means that Angzi will not be allowed to score more points. Ginobili can give Ginobili the burden of scoring. After the timeout, J.R. Smith survived because he finally got rid of Angzi's defense. After a reverse run to catch the ball, the new Jason Kidd passed the ball. J.R. Smith made a three-pointer to help the Knicks regain the lead by 2 points. J.R. Smith, who hit a three-pointer, looked a little arrogant. He raised the goalkeeper and waved wildly, provoking the Knicks home fans to cheer and scream wildly. The atmosphere came out, but soon, the newly on the field Manu quickly extinguished the fiery atmosphere with a hit. Then Manu took over on the offensive end. In the next few minutes, an 11 made another three-pointer, but the offensive role of Angzi was running out. Manu's appearance made the Spurs offense come alive again. Soon, Angzi was not required to maintain this offensive performance, and Vicky also felt that Angzi's 36 points were already a lot, so Vicky took advantage of the dead ball. Get off Angzi. Kawhi Leonard played, and Tony Parker followed, but then, the Spurs did not open the score as hoped. the scores of the two teams continued to rise alternately, and overall the Knicks were slightly ahead. It can only be said that the Spurs defense did not do well in this game, which gave Carmelo Anthony too many opportunities. In the last 2 minutes of the game, Manu Ginobili's mid-range shot equalized the score, but then it was Anthony. He had already scored 41 points. Facing Leonard's defense, he was a back single and turned around. Jump shot. The Knicks again led by 2 points. Then Tony Parker and J.R. Smith fought irons separately, and the difference was still 2 points. With 1 minute left in the game, Vicky walked straight to the sidelines and called a timeout. In 1 minute, this is the final decisive battle. Vicky has to think about how to play the last few goals. Looking at the main players coming off the field, Vic swept the bench again. When he saw Angzi, he paused. Angzi is in very good condition today, and his three-pointers are almost impeccable. Hair. Kawhi Leonard is not in good offensive form, but he can be replaced, but this way, the rebound protection is poor, so Vic looks at Aaron Baines again and has an idea in his heart. There was not much time out, and Vicky clapped his hands. Well, let's do it as soon as possible. First, Aaron, you replace Boris and Kawhi, then we will play a regular tactic, and it will be exhausted. In 24 seconds, the success rate of playing, don't care about the score. Vic simply arranged it and didn't say how to play, but for the Spurs, their tactical routines are numerous, and it is better if they are not arranged specifically. Angzi played again, and Ujia and Sukun in the CCTV live broadcast room also hurriedly regained their attention. Angzi played again. It seems that the game is in good condition. At the end of the game, the Spurs still have to rely on Angzi's excellent state. Yes, the current situation on the court is that the Knicks are still 2 points ahead, and the Spurs really need Angzi's three-pointer. An 11 stepped onto the field and the game restarted. Manu was serving from the sideline. An 11 mentioned the middle distance and made a catch screen for Parker. Through the screen, Parker easily received the basketball, then faced the basket and began to dribble slowly. As Vic said, it's better to run out of 24 seconds, so the Spurs offense is not in a hurry. Angzi ran back and Manu cut in. Although the offense has not yet begun, the Spurs movement has already begun. Aaron Baines is still very qualified as a meat shield. He stood near the free throw line and directly gave Manu a high-quality pick-and-roll screen. Manu Kong cut, ran out of the gap. At this critical moment, J.R. Smith missed someone. So Anthony, who defended Angzi, immediately made it up. If you don't make it, it won't work. This is a big loophole. Anthony made up the defense while shouting at J.R. Smith, "Hurry up and make up the defense." Angzi's side was empty. He watched J.R. Smith running over to make up for defense. Angzi was not in a hurry. He touched his feet on the ground and leaned forward. J.R. Smith had just ran in front of Angzi. Passing by Smith. J.R. Smith was stunned. What's the situation? Then turned his head to see that Angzi was already in the bottom corner, unguarded. Parker's pass is here too. Angzi. 3 points for the empty seat, Ujia shouted. This is a great opportunity, Sukun also shouted. Angzi is already standing in midair in the Madison Square Garden arena. At this moment, countless eyes in the arena are watching Angzi. Angzi never misses the open three-pointer. At this moment, Ujia suddenly took a bite of milk. When the basketball flew to the basket position, it was about to go astray, and there were sporadic cheers from the sidelines. But then, the basketball hit the backboard and a rebound. Bounced into the basket. I'm in. I'm in, Ujia shouted excitedly, and Ujia almost thought that she would not enter. Boos started to sound all over the court, and the Knicks fans who were just ready to cheer just came back with a sigh of relief. On the court, Angzi stood on the sideline, stretched out his long arm to point to the basket, and seemed to say again, I can make it. What can you do? Beep, timeout again, but this time it was called by the Knicks, because now the Spurs are leading, and the Spurs are leading by 1 point, with 42 seconds left. Next, let's play like this. Mike Woodson began to arrange the next key ball. Mero holds the ball to attract the defense, put the ball in this position and hand it to Smith to complete the final shot. Anthony, who has scored 54 points in this game, frowned, and then directly interrupted, "Wait, Mike, don't have to be so complicated, leave it to me. Give the ball to me. I will take care of everything." The words are very domineering. Mike Woodson remembers that Larry Bird had said that, but Mike Woodson did not think Anthony could have the ability and grasp of Larry Bird, so he hesitated to refuse. "Mero, you." "Okay, needless to say, leave everything to me, I think we need a quick attack even more." After the timeout, Anzi continued to play. In order to strengthen the defense, Vich replaced Leonard and Manu. So the Spurs field lineup became a defensive lineup, and Anzi faced Carmelo Anthony. Super Role Player Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 247. The Knicks served from the sideline, and Anzi always remembered what Vicky said during the final arrangement. The Knicks will definitely play a wave of quick offenses, because in this way, they can have one more offense. Therefore, you must remember when you come out and guard your own people. Therefore, Anzi stared at Anthony closely. Anthony ran back, but Anzi followed closely. Anthony ran to the center line, and then turned around and received a serve from J.R. Smith. Anzi's defense is focused on. Anzi, who is serious about defending, is the most terrifying. Of course, it's not that the usual Anzi's defense is not serious, but people's energy is limited, just like Odom often wanders on the court while James Harden goes. With the Rockets' defense, Anzi's energy is either mostly invested in offense, or mostly in defense, or, like this season, half of the offense and defense. However, Anzi, who is really serious, can be said to be at a historical level in single defense. Anthony has already boasted in Haikou. He said he would take care of the final goal. So when facing Anzi's single defense, Anthony's offense was a bit difficult. He almost couldn't get into the three-point line. Anzi stuck him tightly. This kind of fancy dribble rushed all the way to the three-point line. Rushing to the three-point line, Anthony has already felt the pressure from Anzi, but since he said he came, he couldn't pass the ball. So Anthony chose to play singles with his back, Anzi with his back, and sit and fight twice. Anzi refused to give up. The situation was in a stalemate, but seeing the time passing by 1 minute and 1 second, Anthony was also anxious. He directly hit the back twice, and then directly turned around. "Stand-up jumper." Madison Square Garden Arena let out an exclamation. This ball is very difficult. However, this exclamation was immediately held back. Slap. Basketball fly out. It's Anzi again, at this critical moment. A big hat. Teach Anthony to be a man. The basketball flew to the other half. J.R. Smith flew to save, but it was too late. The basketball bounced off the bottom line on the other side. Everyone in the Knicks looked up at the game time again, with 27 seconds left. The hope of scoring a goal quickly was shattered, but fortunately they still have a chance to regain the score, but the Knicks have no timeout. They can only force a serve from the back court, and then quickly rush to the front court. It is a pity that J.R. Smith's three-pointer failed to slam the rebound. Duncan grabbed the rebound, and the Knicks quickly launched a foul tactic. But the emergence of foul tactics also means that the Knicks' general situation is gone. After the foul, Duncan walked to the free throw line, made 2 free throws, and the Spurs led by 3 points. The Knicks' last attack, Anthony missed a three-pointer, and in the end, the game was over. Spurs away 109-106, 3 points narrowly beat the Knicks. After the game, the Madison Square Garden Arena was disturbed. An 11 was stopped by the live host of ESPN Sports TV station on the sidelines. In this game, Angzi scored 39 points, in addition to 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 blocks and 2 steals. He was elected the best of the game, so according to regulations, Angzi should stay on the court after the game to accept live interviews. The reporter who interviewed Angzi can be regarded as a celebrity, Doris Burke. I believe many people who have played 2K know this reporter. She is an ESPN on-site reporter, and the main work content is similar to that of Abby, but the difference is that Abby's TV station is Fox Sports TV, while Doris Burke is ESPN Sports TV. And, you have a career high of 39 points in this game, and your scoring has repeatedly set new highs this season. It contains your countless efforts and progress. Do you have any tips for your progress? The US also pays attention to Angzi's progress. After all, Angzi is now the most popular player with the fastest progress. Doris Burke asked a lot of questions that people want to ask. Angzi thought a little bit and said, I think it's try to be yourself, train hard, improve yourself step by step, and keep your feet on the ground. Doris Burke nodded and asked another question, then the last question, and, you suddenly became a substitute this season, but according to your strength, you can be a starter. How do you position yourself? Many people are also concerned about Angzi's positioning problem, because Angzi is also a hotspot for the best sixth man, but this question is not easy to answer, because it involves some sensitive matters within the team. Angzi was silent for a while before speaking. Said, is my own position? I don't think I have a position. It is enough to be able to play every game and contribute to the team's victory. After asking the 2 questions, Doris Burke also let Angzi go, but watching Angzi go away, Doris Burke always felt that Angzi didn't tell the truth about these 2 questions. However, at the Spurs post-match press conference, which proved that Angzi's words were true. Yes, Angzi is very hard-working and hard. He has to practice almost every day. In addition, he also has a private training team. Many players don't have it, and he has also taken advantage of these advantages through hard training. This question was the most frequently answered by Vicky in this press conference. For other questions, Vicky used 2 or even 1 word perfunctory. For example, Doris Burke asked, Mr. Greg, the Knicks and Spurs played so anxiously in this game, did you think of it before the game? Then Vich replied, I thought of. Well, I can only say that this is an absolute answer. For the Knicks, this loss is quite a pity, but it is only a pity. Mike Woodson said in an interview after the game, we did lose this game by only 3 points. In the final stage, he had the advantage, but there was no way. And stepped forward. He is a magical player. He is not an all-star. He is just a substitute. But at the most critical moment, and defeated everyone, including Melo. Mike Woodson didn't mention Carmelo Anthony's domineering give the ball to me in the final stage of the game. This kind of thing must be successful before it can be brought up, otherwise it would be a joke. The Spurs who took the victory from New York immediately embarked on the trip back to San Antonio. On the bus, Angzi was blackmailed by unscrupulous teammates. And your 39 points. Manu Ginobili took his iPad, opened the news page, and sent it to Angzi. It's already on the headlines of ESPN. Look at this title, China and beats Anthony, 39 points to a new high. Tisk tusk. Looking at the news headline, Angzi's face also bloomed with joy. Manu, thank you, I have a mobile phone, I can see it. He knew very well that the old and cunning Manu came to the door, obviously unkind. No, Angzi, I mean, if you get so many points, should you thank the teammates who passed you the ball? And the teammates who made you screens and made gaps? Of course, don't forget that there is a coach, so. Angzi nodded, he already understood. However, at this time, the previous Vich turned his head and said, let's do it, Since Angzi is going to treat, then we will have a new aide to join in 2 days, Angzi, you will be responsible. Angzi resisted the urge to kill, silently nodded, his wallet was about to collapse again. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 248. Angzi scored 39 points, scored with Carmelo Anthony, and singled out Anthony. These things that happened in the last game once again made domestic fans crazy for Angzi, 39 points. This is a very high score. Yao Ming's highest score in the NBA is only 41 points, only 2 points higher than Angzi. The domestic fans are crazy about Angzi, which made the UAE, who had already been far away from the NBA, determined to return to the NBA and return to San Antonio. Angzi received a call from UAE and learned that UAE will return to the United States and will play several opponents in the near future. He intended to negotiate with the team. He also accepted Angzi's suggestion and directly fired the original agent Fagan, and then directly hired Angzi's agent Ivo Clark. As a result, the UAE became the second customer of Ivo Clark, and recently, Ivo Clark also began to find a home for UAE. In fact, Angzi has always believed that as long as the asking price of the Arab League is not so high, there must be a team in the United States willing to sign with the Arab League. After all, the Arab League is now the more popular space-based fourth position, which is in line with the current NBA tactical trend. On the Spurs side, the new aide that Vich said made many people look forward to. The Spurs returned to San Antonio the next day and held a new aide press conference. The conference was held in the training hall, so when the Spurs were training, they could pay attention to the situation at the press conference. But before the press conference started, they saw the new Spurs aide. The gate of the training hall was pushed open, Spurs general manager Buford walked out first, then made a welcome gesture, and walked out a 2-meter big man behind him. Tracy McGrady. Okay, it's this guy. Angzi looked at the expressions of the 3GDP with interest. McGrady is their old opponent. Back then, the Rockets star is also old, and now he has become a member of the leg-legged army. Up. McGrady began to greet all his old friends on the training court. The Spurs are basically his old friends, so they are more familiar. They asked about hello and asked Angzi. McGrady stretched out his hand, hello, and, I am very happy to be with you. Become a teammate. N11 also nodded and said hello to each other. McGrady used to be Daeo's teammate, and he has also paid attention to the Chinese market in the past 2 years, so he took a few more glances at Angzi. Then he joined the training and ran over to talk to Angzi. N, are you from Huaxia? Angzi nodded, yes, I am with Daeo, and Ali N. McGrady smiled, I like your China very much. Daeo and I are very good friends, as well as teammates from Shandong. I hope to be the same with you. Angzi smiled and nodded. McGrady's press conference was held next to the training hall. It didn't take long. For American reporters, McGrady's joining the Spurs was just a small piece of news, and it did not deserve too much attention. However, for domestic reporters, McGrady actually did not deserve much attention. Join the Spurs. This news immediately became the headline of the day. Even the Heat lost to the Bulls and the Lakers lost to the Clippers failed to overwrite McGrady to the Spurs. Matty joins the Spurs and joins the Chinese again. Joining hands with Angzi, McGrady will become the Spurs backup squad. CBA returns, Ken McGrady Nirvana. Last season, Tracy McGrady played for the CBA Shandong team, so he got the nickname of a famous Shandong. At this time, when he joined the Spurs, Tracy McGrady's goal is obvious, which is the championship. Judging from the regular season performance, the defending champion Spurs will win the championship. Champions, it is very likely to complete consecutive championships, because they have defeated the Heat, Lakers, and Knicks one after another, but only a small loss to the Thunder. In the evening, Angzi held a party in his apartment, celebrating his NBA score of 39 points on the one hand, and welcoming Tracy McGrady to join him on the other. The party cost Angzi half a month's salary, but it doesn't matter. This kind of party is held once for each teammate, which is also a kind of friendship and symbolizes the friendship and harmony within the team. On January 5, 2013, in the third game of the new year, the Spurs' opponents were the Philadelphia 76ers. Compared with the performance of last season that barely made the playoffs, the 76ers this season began to decline further. Only 15 of 34 games have been won, and the winning rate is less than half. Fortunately, they are located in the East and still have the hope of making the playoffs. Both teams played a team battle in this game. 6 of the 76ers made double figures, but only Spencer Hawes scored 22 points. The others scored a little more than 10 points, and the Spurs also had 6 players. In double figures, Tony Parker scored 20 points and 5 assists. And 11 continued his excellent form with 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists and 3 steals. However, the Spurs' second highest scorer here is not an 11. It was Manu Ginobili, who scored 19 points. New aide Tracy McGrady failed to play in the entire game. He still needs to adapt to the Spurs' tactics. He should not be able to get it in a short time. Chance of appearance. On January 7, the Spurs fought the Hornets again. Angzi's fiery state declined slightly. This game only scored 12 points, but with 10 rebounds, plus 4 assists and 2 steals, Angzi's performance was fairly normal. It's just that the Spurs' performance in this game was not very good, so they lost to the Hornets away. After losing to the Hornets, the Spurs lost 10 games. In the first 37 games, the Spurs won 27 games. On January 9, the Spurs played against the Lakers again. This game was the second and last meeting of the two teams this season. After the Lakers changed coaches, the situation improved slightly, but the outside world believed that this improvement was related to the new coach. Mike D'Antoni has nothing to do, because D'Antoni's arrival still failed to activate Steve Nash. The performance of Dwight Howard inside is still a mess. The Spurs still won this game very thrillingly. Basically it was won at the last minute. They finally won 108-105, and Angzi focused on defense. This game scored only 9 points and failed to score. In double figures, the average points per game after the first two breakouts have risen, and now they have begun to gradually decline. After playing the Lakers, the Spurs went to the away game against the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies performed very well this season. There are no absolute star players in the team, but they have gained a firm foothold in the Western Conference by virtue of their defense. Like the Spurs, only lost 10 games. This game was also played to the last minute. The Spurs lost 3 points and the Grizzlies lost 3 points. The Spurs lost their 11th game of the season. This kind of ups and downs made Vich very dissatisfied. In terms of strength, the Spurs have risen, but from a state perspective, the Spurs' performance this season is extremely unstable. Vich made a fire and won the next day's game again. This time it was the Timberwolves who won. In their home court, the Spurs beat the Timberwolves. Then the Grizzlies came to challenge, and the Spurs once again won their revenge. In this way, after losing to the Grizzlies, the Spurs won 2 more consecutive victories. At this time, the time came to mid-January, and the Spurs ushered in a challenge from the Golden State Warriors at home. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletnji. Chapter 249. The Warriors' progress this season is also obvious to all. Stephen Curry and Andrew Bogut are back. One is the Warriors' offensive core and the other is the Warriors' defensive core. The Warriors have 23 wins and 14 losses in the first 37 games. Of course, Klay Thompson's improvement this season is also huge, from the bad team starting shooting guard who averaged 12 points per game last season to the top starting shooting guard averaging 16 points per game this season. In addition, Klay Thompson also developed his single defense. It is now the core of the Warriors' perimeter defense. He can defend three positions by himself. Because Curry is thin and has heavier offensive tasks, all the perimeter defense tasks are lost. Klay Thompson's body. Outside Curry and Thompson formed a one-on-one offensive and one defense combination, while the inside is also a combination of Andrew Bogut and David Lee's one offense and one defense, plus the fifth pick Harrison Barnes on the third position. The Warriors' book strength this season is still quite strong. Inside David Lee and outside Curry are already star-level players, plus the league's scarce big man Bogut, as well as super substitutes such as Carl Landry and Jarrett Jack on the bench. It's no wonder this season the Warriors can achieve such good results. Therefore, the Warriors should not be underestimated, and the Spurs are also very clear. Before the game, Vich made meticulous arrangements and specially adjusted the team's starting lineup. The starting lineup for this game is point guard Tony Parker, shooting guard Manu Ginobili, small forward Kawhi Leonard, power forward Tim Duncan and center Thiago Splitter. In Vich's view, when fighting against a team with a balanced internal and external strength like the Warriors, it is necessary to use attacks to defeat the opponent, and at the same time ensure the rebounding of the inside. So the Spurs put on such a starter with outside offense and high inside lineup. The game is about to begin. Because this game is the Spurs' home court, the Spurs will appear one after another amid the passionate shouts of the DJ on the scene. After the appearance ceremony, Anzi stood on the sidelines to warm up and pressed down. Stephen Curry made a few three-pointers in the other half, screaming in. After finishing the shots, he also ran to this position, lay down, and started to do it. Sit ups. Anzi lifted his leg and continued to press in another direction. As a result, he changed the direction in the wrong direction and kicked his right foot directly to Curry's nose. Curry turned his head abruptly, and then called out, "Hey, An, what are you doing? Do you interfere before the game?" An 11 stunned for a moment, and then laughed, "Stephen, I am not to blame. You shouldn't come here to warm up because you have crossed the line." And 11 pointed to the other half of the court, "You should go there." Stephen Curry glared at an 11 viciously, but an 11 felt that this was from a kid's glaring. Anzi smiled and didn't care. In this game, Anzi was still a substitute, so Anzi did a little warm-up. Otherwise, sitting on the court for too long, then a little warm-up would not be enough. After the warm-up, the game began. The two teams first serve, the referee blew the whistle, and the basketball flew into the air. Thiago Splitter and Bogut competed for the ball. The healthy Split won without pressure. After several serious injuries, Bogut's voice was not as good as before. He started to play with the floor flow. Relying on various small means to gain a foothold inside, perhaps the dirty of the Australian national team started with Bogut. Tony Parker held the ball to the front court, Stephen Curry immediately posted it. This game, because of Manu Ginobili's start, the Warriors' perimeter defense was somewhat stretched. But there is no big problem. Warriors coach Mark Jackson also carefully studied the game. The Spurs who transformed their offense are indeed not so easy to defend. It can be said that wanting to completely defend the Spurs offense is basically an idiotic dream, so Mark Jackson thinks if you want to win this game, the key lies in offense. So at the beginning of the game, Mark Jackson shouted loudly from the sidelines, "Defensive expansion, pay attention to protecting the rebounds." This sentence is easy to understand. Mark Jackson's idea is to defensively expand, defend the Spurs' outside shots, relax slightly on the Spurs' breakthrough, and then protect the rebounds, combined with the front defensive expansion, and strive to play the fast offense that the Warriors want. The Warriors want to play fast offense, but the Spurs are unwilling. The reason is simple. You play fast offense. What about my two big men inside? What about the high inside line advantage I pursue? What do the Spurs do with their own positional advantage against the Warriors? So Vicky also shouted from the sidelines at the same time, slow down. Slow down. So from the first second of the game, the fierce game began to take shape. In the Spurs' first goal, although Curry's physical fitness was poor, his defense was not that bad, because his harassment skills were still very strong, and he entangled Parker tightly, and Parker threw off Curry through a screen. Here, rushed to the three-point line to get the first point of the game with a jumper. But the Warriors quickly returned to the color. Stephen Curry rushed to the front court, and after a pick-and-roll screen, he slammed a three-pointer and hit it with a scream. The arrogant Stephen Curry raised his hand directly amid the boos of the and amp, T arena. With 2 minutes left in the first quarter of the game, the Spurs had gradually taken the initiative on the field. The score of the two teams was 23-18, and the Spurs led by 5 points. Vicky called a timeout and then replaced Angzi and Patrick Mills. Angzi is on the stage, K-Fan yelled loudly in the Cena live broadcast of this game. During this time, the three major domestic broadcasters took turns to broadcast every game of the Spurs, such as today's game was broadcast by Cena, and CCTV had just broadcast the Spurs game 2 days ago, so today I changed my taste and broadcast the Thunder and Mavericks game. As for Tencent, they do not have complete NBA broadcasting rights, and the number of games that can be broadcast is limited, so they can only select important games for broadcasting. Angzi played as a small forward, and he was opposed to Warriors backup forward Drummond Green. This rookie of Brandon Buss, who looks a lot like the Celtics, is the second-round rookie of this year. But so far this season, Drummond Green has also won many opportunities for the Warriors. In fact, the Warriors in recent years have always been very suitable for rookie growth, such as Harrison Barnes and Drummond Green this season, Festus Ezeri, and then forward, Charles last season, Jenkins and Jeremy Taylor, Klay Thompson, and last season's Epeado and Asalau, but there is only one Klay Thompson that really played out, perhaps Harris Barnes is also one. The Spurs attacked as soon as Angzi came on the field. He stood around the corner, and then faced Drummond Green's close defense. Suddenly, Angzi discovered that this ugly second-round forward was so powerful that he could squeeze Angzi a bit. Strenuous. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 250. The Spurs attacked as soon as Angzi came on the field. He stood around the corner, and then faced Drummond Green's close defense. Suddenly, Angzi discovered that this ugly second-round forward was so powerful that he could squeeze Angzi a bit. Strenuous. You know, Angzi's strength is very big. In the NBA, it is comparable to Angzi, probably only those few people LeBron James and Dwight Howard. Now Angzi has discovered that the Warriors also hide a big Lux, this surprised an 11. After all, an 11 always felt that the body determines the upper limit of a player. Looking at the appearance of Drummond Green, it is estimated that the template is similar to his own, but I don't know how the technique is. With regard to the template, Angzi really guessed wrong, because before entering the NBA, Drummond Green was considered to be incapable of defending, and he played the fourth position at the height of the third position, so he was not favored in the draft. But the good thing about Angzi is that Drummond Green still had a few fairly good skills at the time, such as a coquettish pass, and a good three-pointer. So, in essence, Drummond Green is different from Angzi before the draft, and the template is fundamentally different. After Angzi played against Green for the first time, Angzi was a little strenuous, but he still had a good chance by running, but Manu on the other side had a better chance, so Angzi failed to touch the ball. But soon, the next wave of offense, Angzi touched the ball. In a reverse run, an 11 received the ball on the offensive end, but Drummond Green was very fast, he chased it, so an 11 did not shoot directly, because an 11 just came out, he knew he had to look for status. Slap, slap, slap. After dribbling the ball, Angzi realized that there was really no chance, so he cut in with the ball and then divided the ball out. As a result, the ball turned around in Angzi's hands, and then turned out. Drummond Green's defense is very strong. If it is a singles, Angzi really has a hard time getting a chance, especially for those who just played and need to find the touch. Case. Stephen Curry held the ball, and Xiao Ling rushed to the front court. Curry's playing style was a little casual. After being transported to the front court, he seemed a little careless. So Mills wanted to go forward and grab the ball. As a result, Curry went straight down. The dribble, a quick change of direction, directly past Mills. Annoyed Mills stood behind Curry and watched Curry rush into the inside, making a jump shot. As Curry walked toward the back court, he spit out his braces and bit him, then pointed his finger at the basket, still so arrogant. This little hybrid species. It's too arrogant, the grumpy Spurs fans on the sidelines couldn't help but yell. I have to say that Curry looks harmless to humans and animals, but in fact it is really a bit unreasonable. So arrogant. An 11 mumbled, he thought, now that Vich didn't let him defend Curry, if he was allowed to defend, just because of Curry's dribble appearance, he kept killing him. With the Spurs offense, Patrick Mills took control of the ball to the front court. There was not much time left in the first quarter. An 11 suddenly squeezed out Drummond Green, rushed to the top of the arc, and then followed a cross. Screen, catch the ball and shoot. This was Angzi's first shot in this game, but before the ball left his hand, Drummond Green rushed over. With a bang, missed 3 points. The whistle sounded at the end of the first quarter, and Drummond Green grinned at Angzi, revealing a row of white teeth. An 11 complained inwardly, damn, this guy's defense is about to catch up with me. Angzi missed a three-pointer and failed to score in his first shot, but the Spurs still led the end of the first quarter. At 27-23, the Spurs still led by 4 points. An 11 was quite depressed when he left the field. After all, he thought this game was a game where he killed all sides, but in the first quarter, he met Drummond Green, a difficult guy. Of course, an 11 also knew that. Drummond Green's difficulty is only relative. After all, Angzi is not an all-star player. His offense is still very grotesque. When Drummond Green's defense is encountered, it will naturally be misfired. Sure enough, I still didn't meet a strong opponent, an 11 sat down and rested, and sighed involuntarily. Before the start of the second quarter, Vich made several substitutions, replacing Duncan with Boris Dior and replacing Thiago Splitter with Aaron Baines. In this way, the lineup on the court becomes the outside Mills Gamanu, small forward Angzi, inside Aaron Baines and Dior. The Warriors replaced Curry and allowed Jared Jack to play in the second quarter on the bench. The shooting guard sent Kent Bazemore, the small forward was Drummond Green, the power forward Carl Landry, and the center. It's Azari. Both teams played off the bench, and Angzi once again faced Drummond Green. The second quarter was the Warriors' offense. The main killer Jared Jack still stayed with the Warriors. Before, he had the legend of the main killer in the Hornets. Chris Paul was injured, and Stephen Curry was also injured last season. The legend of Jared Jack's main killer has spread. As long as Jared Jack serves as a substitute, the main players will always be inexplicably injured. However, the strength of Jared Jack is unquestionable. His strength is sufficient as a starter, but he always inexplicably becomes a substitute for a star point guard. With the Warriors' first goal, Jack easily broke through Mills and cut into the inside to complete the layup. Then, with the Spurs' offense, Angzi still couldn't get rid of Green's defense. Manu took over the offense and made the same shot. Then Mills and Bazemore's jumpers all hit iron. The Warriors' next offense, Jack chose himself again, cut into the inside, and scored 2 more points. With the Spurs' offense, Anzi couldn't score continuously, and he couldn't stand it. So he got stuck at the top of the arc and asked for the ball, unable to get rid of Green's defense. Anzi decided to try his back. "Why, yellow-skinned kid, are you going to use your big fart cock to top me up?" Ah, Drummond Green is also a master of trash talk. Anzi has confronted him until now. Drummond Green hasn't stopped your mouth. Anzi didn't speak, and single-mindedly hit Green with his back. This time, Anzi must use skill to defeat his opponent. After all, Green is also a strong man, and Anzi can't take advantage of strength. After sitting and fighting, Green didn't move, but Anzi didn't expect any miraculous effect from this sitting. After sitting and fighting, Anzi turned around and squeezed Green to make a shot. After all, Green was still inexperienced. Seeing Anzi was about to make a move, he quickly reached out to block it. Beep, the referee whistled directly. Anzi's forced shot, the basketball directly threw out a very low arc, and then fell off, did not make it. But it caused Drummond Green's foul. To be continued.